we advance this country toward a prosperous green economy, we will have to ensure that we keep agriculture at the forefront of our developmental agenda. And so there is opportunity for agriculture. And as you know, agriculture is more glamorous these days. There's climate smart agriculture. There is proper mechanized agriculture. Lots of people don't want to necessarily go into the field and farm, but they are involved in agro-processing. So there is opportunity for manufacturing or the secondary sector, moving away from just primarily a primary-based raw material proficient nation to one that actually converts raw materials into at least semi-finished products. And I think some persons, some participants here are involved in agro-processing. We talk about value addition. And that right there, agro-processing is a classical example of value added or value addition. So there are opportunities. We just have to think strategically. We have to pursue the requisite training. We have to go after the financing that exists, and not only locally, as many of you may know, there is significant incentive for green business because there is green financing. There's a whole lot of money to be had for green financing for green projects. And so we just need to know what exists and try as much as possible to tap into these opportunities.
I think I have an idea. I think I've said the same statement or a suggestion when we had the youth conference at our Chung Center.
Conference center, yeah.
And I feel like whether it's the justice system or the government is liable for the lack of data protection and data collecting in Guyana. Because I feel like if we had a better system in place when it comes to that, we would have online portals to connect, and that will have all the opportunities available for young people. Obviously, we have, the business bureau. What's it called again? The Small Business Bureau. I've went on their website, and there's only things that are specific to that organization, that body. But there's not like a mother website for when you're looking for opportunities. It's more accessible, and I think that's what is lacking, because obviously we have opportunities for people, for young people, but I feel like the information is not being shared properly or executed properly in terms of where it's accessible to young people. And I think online is a very good way of doing so, because half of us are online all the time and it's more accessible. I think that's an initiative that we need to incorporate, whether it be IDPADA-G or any other organization under IDPADA-G, to have that type of website.
Yeah, I agree with you that there needs to be more investment in research. I was having this conversation recently.
Yes, yeah.
I was having this conversation recently with a group because there was reference made to some report recently released by the World Bank. Is it the World Bank that projects that Guyana would
yes, I think it's
would increase by some 53% or something like that for 2020? And I was saying to that group that as a nation, we need to strategically invest in research and development.
Yes, data. We need that data.
We need data.
And not only data, we do need, you know, that research and that data collecting, but we also need data protection, because that's a really, really big thing in Guyana. Not to go off topic, but a lot of data breaching has been, you know, going on because I don't know if we don't have laws that protect people's data, because identity theft and all of these things, you know, come into place when you don't have laws to protect people's, you know, data. And people need to be trained on how to use people's data when it comes to sharing information with other organizations, or, you know, speaking about it in public. You know, do you know what I mean? Like like that. So
yeah,
that's definitely an initiative that we should advocate for.
Yeah, so indeed there needs to be better investment in research and development. There needs to be more investment in data gathering, because we should not always rely on research conducted by entities external to our country. I tell you what, the Bureau of Statistics is, as we know, the authority on data, particularly social data in our country, or demographic data. And in recent months, we have been engaging the Bureau of Statistics. I say we, I mean the Department of Environment. We've been engaging the Bureau of Statistics in an effort to collaboratively develop a roadmap to environmental data sharing. At the Department of Environment, we have invested in the creation of an EIMMS, an Environmental Information Management and Monitoring System. And so we believe that environmental data, at least, is very important. We believe that there are agencies here that actually collect good usable data, but one of the problems we have is data sharing, because those that invest in data collection want, understandably, to ensure that they can maximize the return on that investment. And so that inhibits data sharing. Another thing that inhibits data sharing is the lack of a transparent, coherent procedure. Of course, there will be need for more investment in data gathering and analysis and all of that. And there indeed is the need for making information available to the public. And so, for instance, once the EIMMS would have been completed and once there is proper data sharing, we should make that available to the public. And whatever agency has responsibility for data housing, data management, the extent to which data can be shared must be agreed upon, and data that is shareable to the public must be shared effectively. People need to know. So I agree that we need to get data out there. One of the things that inhibits proper research too is what you talked about earlier, and this is the lack of copyright legislation. And that has been a sticking point for a long time. And so, you know, you young people ought to pressure the system to make things happen. We need to update the antiquated copyright legislation. We need to make it more responsive to the Guyana is today. And I believe that once people's intellectual property is protected, people will be more encouraged to get involved in proper research and development.
Just pleasant good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
A question. I had some technical difficulty earlier, so I know I missed a lot. But going back in the conversation that we had, it's 3 specific questions I want to ask you based on you were speaking about entrepreneurship. One of the things, what I want to know, what structures are in place to maximize access to the fundings for young African individuals? Secondly, what are the steps being taken to make the information known to African youths? The third question is there a system in place that teach youths in creating a business proposal? Those are the 3 questions I would like you to answer for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good questions. One of them, well, a few of them were answered before. I cannot tell you that there are opportunities specifically for persons of African descent, youth of African descent. I can tell you that the Small Business Bureau does provide training in business proposal preparation. So to answer your last question, the Small Business Bureau does provide that sort of human capacity development.
Okay.
Accessing, did you ask about accessing of finance?
Yeah.
Yes, again, I can tell you that at least the government has made available any funding to youth of African descent specifically. I know the same Small Business Bureau provides small grants for startups. And it helps businesses, it helps potential entrepreneurs to access loans, I think up to 60 million if I'm not wrong. But again, not specific to youth of African descent.
I want to interject. Okay, so I am speaking on behalf of the International Decade for People of African Descent. And in response to your question about proposal writing, so our secretariat they attempt to offer these services to all persons of African descent of all ages. And so that, of course, includes youth. And so if you have an idea that you think is brilliant, it's amazing, you can come into, well, not right now, of course, because of the current situation with COVID, but when the situation becomes less worse, you can actually come into our office, and we have could actually assist in this process.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Over to you, Mr. Doris.
Thank you. I see Matthew's hand. Yes, Matthew.
Hi, good night, everyone. Mr. Doris, one question. Given the current coronavirus situation, and what are your projections for Guyana going forward in terms of shifting to a more technological system, and how does that affect our career opportunities? Because for me, it would be very sad if Guyana goes back to the same old Guyana and does not make any changes as it relates to technological advancement, given this coronavirus situation, because we do not know how long it will last. So does our career opportunities shift given this situation?
Thank you, Matthew. My projections. What I believe is the general consensus is that Guyana, neither Guyana nor the world can return to what it used to be before the advent of COVID-19. And we talk about technology. Well, here we are using Zoom to have virtual meeting. Zoom is used, I'm told, by many lecturers of the University of Guyana to facilitate classes, virtual classes. And so perhaps we should be able to be more conversant. I myself have to challenge myself to become more conversant with simple technology like this. So moving forward, in academia, there must be proper blended methodology, mixed, well, capitalizing on all modes of instruction possible. And this is one mode of instruction that is at our fingertips that we can use. How are careers or jobs likely to be affected post COVID-19? And we don't know when this will come to an end. I pray that this cloud will pass over very, very soon, but we don't know. So we can't project by when we should resume normalcy, or we should start that new life. But I believe that it provides us an opportunity to think strategically about service, the service sector, because until now, we have been a nation invested in primary, and to some extent, we're transitioning to the secondary sector. But we should think strategically about tertiary sector, service sector. What might be opportunity in the service sector for this green developing Guyana? Well, I would start off by saying investment in human capacity development. So I personally would, for instance, have a consultancy that equips people with the ability to do air quality testing, water quality testing, soil sampling, that sort of thing. So I may be able to provide that service, that human capacity enhancement service. To go back a bit, Elsie, I'm seeing your question about jobs, green jobs that are specific to Guyana, to Guyana's context.
So I just utilized the chat option
Yes,
to send
yes.
my question. So that is the question that I asked about specific to Guyana, because I know that we can have a general conversation about the green economy. That's fine. But we are in Guyana, and many of us want to stay in Guyana. So if we can know what are the green jobs that are available now, or what are some of the green jobs that will become available for Guyana in specific sectors, for example, when it comes to climate change, when it comes to green energy, when it comes to water or forestry management, if you can identify some of these for us, then we can begin to position ourselves to get educated or to get trained to prepare for those jobs.
Thank you, Elsie. So in Guyana in particular, of course, green development is green development, and though there would be peculiarities country to country. There are certain general needs in green economies, but for Guyana in particular, there is need for the ramping up of, let's say, agro-processing for value addition. There is strong growth potential for things like coconuts and organic products. So this is in the value addition, agro-processing kind of sector. There would be opportunity for investment in establishment of processing facilities, factories. In the service industry, for instance, there would be opportunities for community-led nature and adventure-based tourism development. And as we know, one of the fastest growing components of the ICT sector is business process outsourcing. So there is opportunity there as well, BPO. We need to invest in infrastructure. There is great opportunity for jobs in civil engineering, building engineering, in architecture. These are some opportunities that either exist or are emerging. Interior and building design, we're talking about a green economy. We're gonna have to think about creating green spaces. So perhaps somebody who is involved in urban planning, or somebody who likes things like landscaping, may find a niche in that area. Waste treatment, waste management, solid waste management, that's an issue in Guyana. Effective or comprehensive solid waste management. There is opportunity for services in treatment and maintenance of solid waste, and also conversion of waste or refuse to energy. I mean, that is farther down the road. Proper recycling. The recycling isn't, we haven't maximized the potential for recycling our country, but there is an opportunity there too. Clean energy technology maintenance, robotics. Recently, our young people have been involved in robotics. And so all of these are opportunities, all of these are current and emerging jobs and career opportunities within this emerging green state. Engineering services, things like computer engineering, computer coding, and that sort of thing. These are areas that are specific to Guyana as we go forward. Any other question?
Hello, good night.
Good evening.
My name is Khadija.
Hi, Khadija.
I also wanted to add that along the lines of engineering and agriculture and all of those things, we also have a section of youth that most people refer to as the creatives, which would be the artists and all of those people. They can also benefit from the GSDS and going green along the lines of upcycling. We don't have too much of it here, but we do have one business. It's called Everything Makes Craft. They do upcycling, so they would take plastic bottles and make chandeliers, like toilet paper rolls and all of these items that we would just throw away. So we also have that option. We can also start businesses along those lines. So that would also be another option for youth along the lines of entrepreneurship.
Yes, thank you. I often say that something is called a refuse because of someone's inability to utilize it as a resource. And so we have to think about maximizing the use or the utility of materials. One of the issues we've had is our inability to generate the minimum quantity of waste that can make waste to energy or effective resource transformation a profitable industry. And so perhaps there's an opportunity for us to think about transporting. I'm not sure we are in the business of transporting waste to or exporting waste to countries that have the technology to use waste as resources or refuse as resources. But perhaps there's an opportunity there for us to tap into a market that doesn't exist here. I don't know what IDPADA-G does in terms of connecting local small entrepreneurs, Black or African Guyanese, particularly young entrepreneurs with markets and opportunities external to Guyana. Matthew or anybody from IDPADA-G?
At the moment, I do not think that we have that kind of link, but our credit union, within the credit union, there will be a lot of opportunities, both locally and internationally, for engagement and trade. So I think while it does not exist now, that does not mean that it's not going to exist in the future. So I can see it happening soon as in maybe next year.
Thank you. So Elsie, you're in the business of preparing yourself for this emerging green economy by pursuing studies in urban and rural planning at the master's level. That is good. And as you know, there has been the conversation about whether Georgetown can remain a viable capital. I don't know if you want to get into that discourse, but ideally, I believe that the capital city of a state that calls itself green should represent green. Georgetown doesn't have much space, much opportunity for green placemaking, and in some countries, the green place or the green space is the cornerstone of a green city. I don't know whether Georgetown has the capacity to be transformed into a green city. Perhaps Elsie can talk about that.
It does have the capacity, but one of the issues that Georgetown is facing currently is that both two issues. There are building codes, but they are archaic, and also there isn't strict adherence to the building codes. So we need to revise our building codes. And if it was up to me, I would stop anyone from building anything else in Georgetown, because Georgetown is significantly below sea level. And what I would do is I would start to green Georgetown, because there are places that there are no greenery. We can start by greening along the roadways, along the sidewalks. Those are easy places to green. And then there are currently empty spaces, like empty lots, empty playgrounds. Those are places that we can start to green. So there are small things that we can do to green Georgetown. We don't need to just tear up the whole blueprint and start from scratch, because people's lives will be affected, but we can make small incremental changes. And I would suggest in the future evacuating Georgetown making it a historical and green city, mostly for tourism, and evacuating the population to higher land, and eventually evacuating the capital to higher ground. But that's going to take some time. But we can do small incremental things right now to make Georgetown at least look nicer, look greener.
All right, Madam Urban Planner, we look forward to your involvement in this strategic move. Lyndon, you had a question? Sorry, if I don't see your raised hands, just butt in because I'm not seeing it all.
Okay, going back to the representative from IDPADA-G, one of my main, everything that you're saying is very interesting, but there's questions that are being asked and questions of my own that I would like to clarify. She made mention of those who already, or persons with startup business, the possible access to funding. Question or suggestion is that probably IDPADA-G can look at persons who may have great ideas, but do not necessarily have the funding or the assets to acquire these loans, because I know there's a lot of young people who has great ideas, but they don't have the monies to even go ahead and start anything. So I don't know if there's anything in the pipeline that they can assist persons who may have an idea and help them to, or guide them to access any form of funding whatsoever to get this initiative off the ground. Because if you look at it from a little information I have, there's specific banks in the US that cater for persons who just have an idea. They necessarily doesn't have assets, but they assist these individuals with loans to get their business off the ground. So probably, I don't know if you guys have that or explore that idea of assisting individual who may just have idea but don't have the assets or even, you know, to get the business off the ground.
Okay, I've heard your question and duly noted. What I can say is that, like I said before, it's not a mechanism that we have in place at the moment, but it is something that I can follow up on. So your suggestion and your comments are excellent. And that is the purpose of discussions such as these, so that we can take your comments, your suggestions, whatever information you have, and take it to our secretariat so that we can follow up, see what is viable and what is possible, and engage you further on the said topic.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emma.
Matthew, I think I did your question an injustice by my inability really to project what technological advancement in terms of the job market can result from COVID-19, post-COVID-19. I don't know if you have any thoughts. Is there anything in particular you were thinking about? You feel free to share with us.
I'm in the finance stream. Within that stream, there are a lot of opportunities that can be targeted in Guyana. Currently, I'm working on a research paper on cryptocurrency. And from what I've learned, sooner rather than later, Guyana would have to transform into a digital currency state. Countries like Barbados, earlier this year, Barbados released the first digital currency. And what the digital currency enables persons to do is to, especially persons from rural areas, persons who are unbanked, and unbanked in the sense that they don't have access to a bank account. They don't have the necessary identification to get a bank account and so forth. They can conduct transactions using Bitcoin. And thus far in countries like Bermuda, Barbados, Bahamas, it's been a revolutionary innovation, I guess. But in Guyana, there's still a lot of, we don't have the proper regulatory framework for digital currency. I mean, just recently, GT&T was castigated for the MMG payments by senior persons in Guyana. So it's going to take years before Guyana adopts the digital currency and the technology. But for young entrepreneurs and for creatives, persons, especially in the technology field, they could think of creating businesses that deal with digital currency. There's also in Kenya, there's a company called BitPesa that allows for transactions in terms of remittances. So Guyana has one of the highest costs of transactions in terms of remittances if you use Western Union or if you use the bank. And the prices for the bank are even more ridiculous. But BitPesa now is a cryptographic company where you can transfer money from the States to Kenya for just 3% transaction fees. And the usual transaction fees using Western Union and those other places, 10%. So that is just a small company that has been helping the poor in Kenya to receive more remittances, and also the families that are sending them to be able to send more remittances. So there's a lot of scope for development in the financial sector post COVID-19. I am not the IT person, so there's a limit. I could work along with an IT person, but as to developing something on my own, I am clueless. So that was my thoughts, but I don't know in terms of the green economy and other areas, how those career opportunities align with technology. So that's what I was trying to garner from you.
Thanks, Matthew. Right in the financial sector, you know, when I was in China, it blew my mind how all I needed was an application, you know, an app on my phone, and I could purchase from almost any shop. I could do anything I want from that app, you know. It's called WeChat. Perhaps you could check it out, especially you tech people. Check out WeChat and see if you can develop something similar to that for Guyana. With WeChat, there is that kind of e-commerce possibility, and you really don't have to walk with cash. You just turn up with your app, you scan some barcode and you make your payment. If you want to transfer cash from account to account, you can do that. If you want to pay somebody for a service, you can do that from that one app. So many things. I haven't seen an app like it. It's a wonder. WeChat, WeChat. So perhaps there's an opportunity for some tech person or a group of persons to go beyond that MMG service that GTT currently offers, to a place of helping us move around with less cash, if any cash at all. I rather suspect that one of the greatest challenges, though, would be security. There will be the need for strengthening of the requisite security mechanism before we can get into that. So there's an opportunity for studies, for probably postgraduate study.
I have a
Yes, Elsie.
contribution to make in terms of the opportunities for Guyana post COVID-19 in terms of technology. If you look at all of the basic sectors of a country, I think that in Guyana's case, since we are a developing country, we have not moved past the typical paper and pen systems in many instances. So just looking at these sectors, you will see opportunities for involving technology in the day-to-day functioning. And since I'm concerned about planning, for example, I would look at the use of GIS mapping in terms of risk management. For example, when there are floods, Guyana has a major issue with flooding. We can use that type of technology to determine where are the vulnerable communities who need rescuing, just like how Facebook has this option to mark yourself safe in terms of a disaster. This is actually something that can be integrated into a government system that deals with first responders, for example. Then I'm thinking about our current landfill situation, how we dispose of our waste. Even though we do not have enough to maybe make biogas or do something that generates money, there are landfill sites that exist all across the world that have no smell, that after a few years, people can actually use the land to build homes and different things like that. But here in Guyana, we still have dump sites. And this is a good opportunity for the engineers and the technically inclined people to study landfill management and smart landfill management to move Guyana from dump sites to landfill.
Sanitary landfill.
Yes. So those are opportunities. And I think that we now as young people have to think about non-traditional career areas that we can study to move Guyana to usher Guyana into the green age. There's also renewable energy. Yes, we have oil, but we have to be smart. You know, there's a saying that dealers don't use their own stock. So I'm thinking, yes, we might be selling oil, but we don't necessarily have to rely on fossil fuels. We can go into alternative energy. Also, climate change is an issue. We can, for the architects, you can start thinking about resilient architecture, green architecture. There's just like, my mind is buzzing with the different possibilities, and this is all related to the green economy as well as technology post COVID-19. And just today, STEM Guyana launched an application called Help Guyana. I don't know how many people have seen it, but you can check it out, where it's an application that allows you to, one, seek services that you need at this time during COVID-19, like masks, or you can access vendors to see who's selling what and in what area they're located. Also, people who need assistance can register as a vulnerable household. So things are moving, and there are things that we can definitely get on board with.
Thank you, Elsie. Yeah, it's you young people who are going to make this happen. You're going to be here for the next 5, 6, 7 decades. And so you are likeliest, among all of us, you are likeliest to be invested in long-term visioning. And you are more conversant with technology. You are more au fait with the world as it is. Lots of us older ones are still dealing with the world you consider archaic. So you're gonna have to be the leaders to move this green economy. And not only is Guyana going to be a green economy because it's going to manage to skillfully balance petroleum production and environmental management. But Guyana is going to be especially green because it involves the youth in its development. And so I encourage you young people to want to be involved in the critical decision-making processes of your state, to want to be involved in moving Guyana forward. It might not be handed to you. You may have to just get up and go and get it. And one of the best strategic first moves is to know of the opportunities present and emerging and go after the requisite training so that when the system is looking for human capital, the system will not be able to look past you because you have the necessary skills. Any other question, contribution? Any unanswered questions so far?
This time we can take like one last question, if anyone has, for Mr. Doris to address at this time. Please indicate by raise of hand.
Look, so I wanted to throw out, there were just a few people who would have asked questions, made contributions. I would like to throw it out to all of us, to all of you, to say, I don't know that each person can do that, but as many as can, I would like to throw it out to you to say what you believe the government, this state must do to empower African Guyanese, Guyanese of African ancestry. I don't usually like to use the word descent. Youth of African ancestry, African lineage, African heritage. What is one thing, and we should take at least 10 persons, one thing you want the state to do for youth of African ancestry, particularly because we know, I don't mean to get into the politics of our country, but our politics is so pervasive, it's almost inescapable. You really can't talk Guyana and not talk politics. Our country is too small and the politics is too big. We know that historically, people of African ancestry have been disadvantaged systemically in our country. And I believe that the system owes it the people of African ancestry to redress the injustice people of African ancestry have endured for decades, even to this day. So I'm going to ask at least 10 persons to say at least one thing you believe the government should do to empower and bring equity to youth of African ancestry, or persons generally of African ancestry in Guyana. Because I believe that once the inequity continues, our inability to tap our resource wealth, particularly the human resource wealth of our country, will continue to undermine our country's development. The inequity, social inequity, economic inequity, makes some less capable of contributing to national development. So go, at least 10 persons, one or two things that the system must do to redress the inequity, to redress the injustice to which persons of African ancestry in this country would have been subject for decades. because you've been asking about opportunities for youth of African descent. And unfortunately, I have not been able to tell you that the system has any facility for you in particular. IDPADA-G has, but to what extent IDPADA-G can meet the needs of the masses is questionable. The government has a responsibility, I believe, and I believe that there's going to come a time in this nation when we're going to have the inconvenient conversation about what equity should look like in this country.
Okay, so persons who have questions, kindly indicate by raising a hand, and I'm going to unmute you in that order. Thank you.
The question at hand, it's easier said than done. That's my response. And reason being is that we were at a disadvantage for a very long time. However, there's never too late to start. One of the things that when it comes to equity is equal distribution among persons who might need resources more than some. If the government should decide to intervene and try to support Africans or the descendants of Africans, it would show as though it's blatant racism. That's how it will be put over to the entire country or populace or whoever might be listening. However, availability of resources is one of the key factors that we have been deprived of for a very long time through the banking system or through financial system in general. Because not being racial, but most persons who actually control the financial institution in Guyana are of Indian descent. So with that, you find that when those who have good ideas go to the bank to receive funding for a specific project or whatever, they find it difficult to access it. So establishing a financial institution that is not biased against Africans or descendants in time to come would be a key asset to start or to see changes or development coming from people of African or descendants, so to speak. So there's one specific area. We need to look at equal distribution of resources.
Thank you, Lyndon. So equitable distribution of resources, fair, equitable access to finance, especially finance for the purpose of investment. So good, that is a good start. I can pick names at random. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say access to land. I think that there have been issues over the years in terms of ancestral lands that were taken away from African Guyanese. And I believe that those ancestral lands need to be given back to their rightful owners. Also, in terms of access to land from the government system, there should be fair access to land for persons who do not necessarily have the means to afford high cost land. For example, in countries across the Caribbean, St. Kitts, for example, the government has established a scheme where persons who work for a certain amount of money can access land at a lower cost. And they can also access homes where the government builds the homes and then you pay for it. I know that Ministry of Communities has a housing project right now, but even for me, those are too expensive. So I think that it has to be proportionate to what people actually make in terms of their salary. And also for those who do not have earning power, they still deserve a decent place to live and they still deserve to own something. So I think that access to land is one of the things that need to be dealt with, beginning with returning ancestral lands that were taken from African Guyanese.
Thank you. Thank you, Elsie. So that's number 2, equitable, fair access to land, and the cost of land must take into consideration the potential purchaser's ability to pay for the land. And very importantly, ancestral lands that were confiscated, were basically taken away from Guyanese of African ancestry, must be returned to them. I'm going to ask, before we continue with the next 8 suggestions, how are we collectively going to demand of the state to return to African Guyanese lands taken away from the state? No one has to answer now, but it's something that we should at least think about, because our saying that in this forum, and I'm told that this is broadcast on Facebook Live, our saying it on this forum is not sufficient. We have to hold the system to account. So we should think about how we're going to do that strategically. And we must know that once we make that demand, we're going to have to stay the course, because it might not happen in a day, in a month, in a year, but we're going to have to stay the course. And one of our problems is the fact that we get hot and cold almost immediately. So we jump on an issue and we cool off almost immediately. We're going to have to, as we say back in Berbice, we're going to have to demonstrate stick-to-itiveness. But it is something that we should push for. 8 more people. There we go. There we go.
One of the main things I believe that what people are saying that they need the government to have fair distribution of things. For instance, the person that spoke earlier spoke about in terms of accessibility of land based on how much you earn and so on. Actually, you are evaluated when you go to housing. You are evaluated based on your income to receive that plot of land, and you can update that as you go on. If you want a higher, if you want a better size of land, and you can update that as you go. Anyhow, there's now what we're talking about. So to be very honest, there's no such thing as a fair platform if you're of African heritage, so to speak. Because when you say fair, I'll give you an example. If you want to do what's called this business, like the people who build roads and so on. I can't remember the word is excuse me. Anyhow, right. So in order to get yeah, who's build roads? So what's called them? I'm so sorry right now. My brain.
Civil engineers.
Anyhow, engineers. Right. Let's just say all right, great. So we got this engineering company, and I'd like to sign up. Now, before it used to be a case whereby, if you know this person, you can go and get it done, you're gonna go through no channel. But now it's fair in a sense that okay, anybody can get it because there is a form, you go and sign it up, and you have to fill these criteria. However, the criteria, or a few of the criteria is one, have to have a few millions in your bank account. You've got to have a certain amount of machinery, you need a bond, and a few other things. Now, if I'm now starting out, now more than likely, I won't have this. However, the other races, they would band together and be like, okay, because I have associates of mine who would have done this. They'd come together and be like, okay, so you need $10 million in your bank account, you need to have 5 trucks, 2 cranes, and whatever it is, and they come together and they show this on file. Well, look, I've got this. You get to keep the machinery 3 to 5 years, however long you may need it, and you're able to get a government contract, and then when you're done, you give them back whatever it is. Now, in terms of the government doing something for, I'd say, people of African heritage, what they can do is to have, I'd say, persons like yourself and others to have a system set up where, well, not only Black people, but investors in general be able to have monies put aside along with the government. So let's say somebody comes with a project. This project costs, let's say, use a figure, $10 million. Now there's all of these investors, whether Black, Indian, whatever it is. However, regardless of the race of the investor, this goes towards a person of African heritage, so to speak, to kickstart whatever project it is. However, not just a project, but a sustainable one at that. Because, you know, a lot of people say, well, oh, I get this project, but then your project is just sending tambourine balls that will just last for 3 months because tambourine ball probably has disease. I'm just saying something. So that is my take on it. I don't know if it has any weight, but that's just my take.
Kevon, thanks, brother. Your contribution has weight, actually, because one of the things that has been undermining our advancement as a people is the fact that we don't seem to trust each other. We don't cooperate very well. Everybody else seems to understand the benefit to getting together, but we struggle in that department. So yes, we need to get together. Perhaps the cooperative is a good opportunity for that sort of getting together. If one person is incapable of accessing financing because the person doesn't have, you know, the kind of capital, the kind of whatever the bank would want to take, some corporate body should be able to back that individual and so forth. I suspect through the co-ops or the union, the IDPADA-G was talking about, there might be that sort of facility. Elsie, I see your contribution. We didn't say fair, we said equitable. And yeah, Kevon, you did make mention of how unfair it would seem, and Linden did say that too, that if the government were to administer resources to persons of African ancestry or their communities to equitably develop them, it would appear racist. And Elsie is making the point that we didn't talk about fairness, we talked about equity, and you would know that it was unfair for those who systematically and systemically ostracized Black communities from development. It was unfair when they did what they did to create such an unequal, an unfair, unjust social system. And to redress that ill, that wickedness, steps taken will have to appear unfair. I'm not saying that unfairness is justified. I'm saying that it would appear unfair if we were to equitably develop communities and people or demographics that were historically ostracized. All right. Well, let's go to 2 more then. 2 more contributions, 2 more recommendations of what the system can do, or perhaps what we can do, what IDPADA-G can do, and so on, to redress the injustice meted out to people of African ancestry.
Yes, I unmuted Mr. Nelson, so he can go now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Doris and all listening. Thank you for your contribution.
Good evening, sir.
In your presentation, you made reference of IPAD and the Small Business Bureau. And I think these are indeed two very good organizations or institutions that are created to help small businesses. But based on my own experience, I believe that there are a lot of red tape that are associated with these institutions. And if we are to really bring about some amount of aid into the African community, especially as it relates to business startup, I think one thing that might be of particular importance is the establishment of community-based institutions that take on that functionality. But instead of having as much red tape, I believe it would be a good idea of having most of those removed. And what I mean when I say the red tape, I'm talking about asking for the minimum collateral and providing maximum support. Support such as helping them with business plans, support such as doing market research, packaging. One of the persons who made a contribution spoke to the Talman Ball vendor. And I'm thinking that idea could be used. What could be done is processing, packaging, and marketing of that simple product so that a profit could be realized. I believe that, especially when we look at many of the communities, I don't want to say only Afro or African communities, but there are a lot of small businesses, but I think they lack, one, the collateral to access finances, and they lack that kind of structure so that their small business could scale up. So that would be my contribution.
Good night and greetings. My concern basically is just a kind of affirmation to what the first two speakers said. Now, in order for us to accomplish the goals in terms of accessibility of land and also gaining funding, I really think it's important for us as a collective or IDPADA-G to develop what I would call a task force. And this is also is bracing on the last speaker's comment in terms of community-based organizations. Now, in this task force, we will be specifically focusing on the financial aspect. So within that task force, you're going to have someone specifically dealing with funding, both debt funding and grant funding. Now, small business persons who may not reach the requirement in terms of documentations like income statement preparation, business plans, etc., would have persons within that task force which are skilled, which would aid them in getting these documentations. Also, if you ever pursue land, most likely inheritance land, you're going to find they have a lot of red tapes there as well in terms of documentation. So you're going to have persons in this task force specifically dealing with assisting small businesses and persons of African descent in accessing these major collateral items. In addition to that, most businesses does not have the requisite capital or collateral to access funding and the contracts that was spoke that the one of the speakers talk about. Now within the task force, you're gonna have what you call pool capital. So something like what Small Business Bureau does, they actually back, I think it's 70% of the collateral of the entrepreneur. So if we can develop something like that, we're going to go as a collective, and there is going to actually be the persons who is actually standing the weight for the collateral. That's just my small contribution. Thank you.
So yes, thanks for your contributions. I think we may have utilized all the time available to us now. So I'm going to pass it back over to Matthew, but just before I do, I'm going to encourage you young people to want to we the people, the state cannot look past. I can't say that enough because sometimes we complain about not having opportunities, but we don't position ourselves strategically to benefit from these opportunities. And so I encourage you to seek out these opportunities. I need to do more to acquaint myself with all the opportunities that exist within the various sectors in the context of green economy, and find a way of communicating those to you, perhaps through IDPADA-G now. Perhaps the Department of Environment should have some means of communicating to the general public whatever opportunities exist. So these are conversations we're going to have back in my office, and this is what I will consider even in my private capacity, because this information is necessary, and so I have my part to play. So thank you again, young people, for coming out, and hopefully we can have a follow-up conversation. I hope IDPADA-G has made note. I don't know if this session was recorded. I hope it was. And I hope IDPADA-G has some means of having all, the contacts of all participants here so that we can share with them that recording if there is a recording, and we can share with them any sort of, perhaps an outcome, a basic outcome document from this session. So let's keep connected, and let's do the best we can do to move this country forward. Thanks again, and thanks for the opportunity. And I look forward to engaging with you soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doris. I want to extend our gratitude on behalf of the International Dedication for People of African Descent Assembly Guyana for your well-informed presentation. You're always an interesting person to listen to speak. So I'm sure the young people were blessed by and informed by what you would have shared with us tonight. To the young people, IDPADA-G will continue to have weekly sessions utilizing Zoom for the foreseeable future. This was our first session, so we have some stuff that we will work on to ensure the sessions are better going forward. We have some sessions coming up on politics, our political situation, our race relations, post-elections, COVID-19, and coming out of the session tonight, somebody from our committee suggested that we should have a session about financing, business financing and so forth. So we do have a recording of the session tonight, and we're gonna go through it, and it will assist us in formulating our future programs and our plans. So thank you for attending, everyone. Please ensure that next week you share the link with more of your friends so that we can have more persons being on this platform to engage with each other and to learn. So again, thank you very much for coming out. Stay safe and ensure that you practice social distancing.